What's up, good people? Mark Holmes here, and as always, I want to thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report. Without you guys, as well as you ladies, you know that this literally does not work. All right, so, interesting thing. We went from Amari Cooper being on the PUP list and worried about whether or not he was going to be ready to start the season to he's going to be playing this weekend, just a couple of days from now, against the Texans. This is actually great news to hear that he's actually ready to rock and roll and to get back onto the football field, because I'll be honest with you, I've been worried and everything else. I've been told, just stop hating on Amari Cooper. But the thing is when you're a Cowboy fan, and after 26 years of waiting and waiting and waiting, I'm like a mother hen. I worry about everything. And you want to make sure that everything is going to be as good as possible. And it's not a matter of trying to hate. It's actually out there trying to put out what you're hearing and the questions that are there for each situation. You don't ever want to go into something blind, as in, everything is, rainbows and unicorns. You want to be realistic about what is in front of you. That way you're not disappointed. So Amari Cooper, the route technician, the bone is healed completely in his foot. He is good to go. That is freaking great news. What's interesting is, there's all kinds of lists out there. There's all kinds of statistics and things. It almost blows my mind where we literally have, the last 5 minutes of a game, QBR stats and things like that. You realize that back in the 70s, and one of the reasons why a lot of you don't understand that players that played in the 70s and 80s, that the greatness that was them, was because they didn't keep statistics like they do now. And fantasy football wasn't the rage like it is now. Everybody goes through with fantasy football numbers, and they gauge that on whether or not you're great. But think about this. Sacks were not a statistic that they actually kept up with. They didn't. In fact, they didn't even have a term for what is a sack. And when you think about the word sack, how does that make sense, tackling a quarterback before the line of scrimmage as a sack? You ever wonder that? Well, that was actually coined by the term by Deacon Jones. Deacon Jones, who invented the head slap, where he would literally slap the helmet of the offense, and not a love slap. He would slap and push them out of the way. And he figured that wherever the head goes, the body will follow, and literally would push them out of the way on the way to sacking the quarterback. And the way the term came about was, he viewed it kind of medieval, that when they came, when Hannibal and his elephants came to town and all that stuff, they, annihilated, they sacked, they took everything, they plundered the city, they sacked their resolve. And so in his mind, that's what he was doing to the opposition. He was coming to town. He was taking everything from them. He was sacking their will. And that's where the term sack came from. Enter today, where there's a statistic for everything. And this is where it's easy for you guys. You don't actually go to a book and actually read the book. You can just Google any statistic that you want here, and boom, you got it. You want to know about takeaways? Okay, all you have to do is say, defensive takeaways, and boom, here it is. You can look at it, so they'll tell you what the first 3 games were, the whole season, or the last 3. So you can see and rate all of these different matrices. I mean, when you go to Pro Football Focus and you get all of these statistics about every player out there, it's just crazy. And so now ESPN, of course, because now there's so much information out there, it's actually getting information that people want to read about. And a lot of it is the headlines of it. So sometimes you come with statistics that may not necessarily mean much as far as winning games, but it definitely sounds good when you talk about it and you want to click on it and say, oh, yeah, there you go. So ESPN has come up with a new list today, and it's value list, value contract list. And Tyron Smith is considered one of the great value contracts that are out there, which is crazy because when the contract was originally signed, and I remember it because that was a week after the first time I met Tyron Smith, literally. And he took a picture with Joe Boo. And this is when the first autograph signing show that I went to in Chantilly, Virginia in 2013. A week later, he signs a $97 million contract where people lost their minds. They literally said, how can you pay an offensive lineman that kind of money? And the thing about this contract has been, this contract has had triggers that were built into it that were basically kind of like a piggy bank. You need a little cash because you got something you need, you know. You could go to Tyron Smith's contract and basically sign with a pen. You convert some of the contract into guaranteed money. Boom, you got the cash. So the cap really wasn't an issue with a contract like this. And we've seen him do this with like DeMarcus Lawrence. We saw him do it with Tony Romo's. The only thing with a contract like this, when you do that, is you got to have the player end up being a player that's going to play for, you know, the life of his career. Because when you look at what his cap number is right now in comparison to, say, Trent Williams, who just signed a new contract, it's chicken feed. Now, you'll question whether or not, you know, is he going to be able to play the whole season? Is his body okay and all that? That may be part of the problem, part of the equation. But if he's healthy, he is still one of the best offensive tackles in football, bar none. And you look at what we're paying him, and you look at it and say, yeah, that's a value contract. Now, this contract is going through because they did restructure some of it, again, getting some more cash this past year. It does go to 2024. We don't know if Tyron Smith is going to play till 2024, although in his mind, he's not ready to retire at any time soon. And you look at this and say, yeah, that's a contract that the Cowboys definitely did well. And when we go forward and we look at the contract for Dak Prescott, at the moment, you know, you look at the casual fan looks and thinks about how much money he got this 1 year, you know, guaranteed money in the check that got written. But the reality is the way the check works is that doesn't all count against the salary cap in 1 year. Yes, he is the highest gross paid individual, I believe, in sports this year. But on the cap, it's only $22 million. And come next year, it's only 31. And as we see, Josh Allen just put it way up there in the stratosphere as well. There's other guys that are going to get paid. And even when you see Jamal Adams getting $17.5 million as a safety, you realize that the the ceiling right now is going to be the floor going forward. And because the NFL is now flush with so much money because of the new television contract, because of gambling money, it was advantageous for the Dallas Cowboys to get Zeke Elliott's contract done and Lyle Collins and Dak Prescott's before all this new money resets the market. And for those who say that Zeke Elliott is overpaid, I think you're going to see a resurgence of Zeke Elliott. And if that is the case, and they use the offense where it's not just we're going to bludgeon you with Zeke Elliott, you could see Zeke Elliott's career be prolonged, much like Emmitt Smith's was. I'm not saying he'll play and break the NFL record, but if they use him the right way, if they don't overload him and use him as a battering ram, if they get him the ball in space, you will see Zeke Elliott be able to play and be productive for many years going forward, in which case you look at the contract 2 years or 3 years from now, we may be saying the same thing about Zeke Elliott's contract. But we'll have to wait and see on that. So, Amari, can't wait to see you on Saturday night. We'll be having a watch party here, of course, and doing what we do. So, as always, I want to thank you all for watching the Joe Boo Sports Report. I'll see you later.